God for Daddy is keeping you all awake.
Yeah.
So I'm moving around and probably banging on some tables. There was some book sections. How about that? So don't go to sleep. Because when like I do with students, kids, I walk up next to them, go softly, and I start talking loud. So again, my name is Samuel Captain Scott III. I'm born and raised in Morristown, New Jersey. My father and his 17 brothers and sisters lived here in Mount Holly. They moved into Mount Holly in 1940 when they left the original homestead of my third great grandparents. Some of you might, if you're from Mount Holly, you probably know some of my aunts and uncles. My last aunt, the last one of my father's family just passed about 3 weeks ago. She was 96, and my father would be 101 today. So there was 18 of them. That was just one generation. So my talk, I start my family history. I have to talk about how enslaved Africans got here. You can't pass it up. You have to talk about it. What you see on this first slide is the headstone of my third great grandparents, Neville and Cherry Still. Angelina was Dr. James Still's first wife, and Beulah was his second wife. This headstone is out in Chemung, off of Stokes Road. It's a piece of property that they've designated to be their burial ground. It said that Indian Joe Moore is buried out there also. The images on the far left is William Still. In the middle is Dr. James Still and a brother named Peter Still. All three of these men were notable. History made, they're notable in history because of the relationships and what they did as adults. So we know that we know in the 17th, 18th century, tea, coffee, and tobacco became social patterns in England, not just for the wealthy, but for mass consumption. England's consumption of sugar in 150 years increased by 2,500% by the early 19th century. Sugar was processed from sugar cane, and it was a very labor-intensive crop. We know in 1516, the sugar cane was harvested and then sent back to Spain from the West Indies. Such the slave trade began from the west coast of Africa. We know that in 1619, a Dutch ship transported 20 Africans to Jamestown, Virginia. What's interesting in New Jersey is that in 1664, the concessions agreement of 1664 offered 60 acres of land for every enslaved African imported into New Jersey, which helped increase the slave population in the state. The quote I listened, I was on a show one time, and I thought it was an interesting quote, and I wanted to put it. I always kind of talk about it a little bit. It says that many people think that African history started with slavery, but better said, African history was interrupted by the transatlantic slave trade. Our history in this country didn't start by slave trade. Our history was vast already in Africa before the slave trade got started. As you know, the textiles and runs and manufactured goods made in England. They picked up the enslaved Africans and brought them over to North America and South America. And this kind of was a triangle for the goods and trades. Kind of the same thing. So a lot of the Africans, West Africans came out of that Bight of Benin, Nigeria, which is now present-day Nigeria, Sierra Leone, all on the west coast of Africa. And you also would notice that there are a lot of African-looking people that live in Brazil, in Central America, because there were sugarcane crops there. They may not consider themselves African, but they're African descent. We know in 1677, the first Quaker proprietors arrived in Burlington in Gloucester County. 1683, John Hunt purchased from the proprietors 1,300 acres located in Gloucester County. Within the bounds of this John Hunt plantation, there was a small community of enslaved Africans known as Guineatown, located in present-day Brooklyn, Brooklawn, Belmar, and Mount April, New Jersey. In 1761, a slave ship Hannah transported cargo of slaves from the coast of Guinea and auctioned in the Delaware River. 1797, in Guineatown, a small community of freed slaves located within the area of plantation. What's interesting is that in 1800, it's noted that 80% of Berlin County, New Jersey, and 90% of Gloucester County, New Jersey, the black population is free. We do know, as earlier today was spoken about, in 1804, New Jersey passes Act of Gradual Abolition of Slavery. New Jersey was the last state to come up with some kind of abolition of freeing their slaves. They were the last of the Northeast state that would do that. What's interesting about that too, about that act, that males, if you were born of a slave, as a male, you could be free at 25 years of age. As a woman, you could be free at 21 years of age. That was nothing more about that. It was an economic break-even point that they figured that the slave masters could make money, could recoup their money back on having their slaves, how they took care of them. Right? And the other interesting point of that is that many of them, like I said before earlier today, a lot of times the individuals got close to being of age, the slave owners sold them further down south, like Louisiana, New Orleans. 1861, the Civil War begins. Confederate Army attacks Fort Sumter, South Carolina. 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation issued by President Lincoln only freed the slaves in the state's rebellion against the Union. The Civil War ends, and the 13th Amendment abolishes slavery throughout the nation. Early beginnings of the Still family. We know that the Guineatown residents would later move into Snow Hill. Some of the earliest West Jersey documented enslaved Still families date back as far as 1752. Manumission, Berlin County deed books, 1786, 1800. There was a Philip Hope and Candace Still, manumitted on March 2nd, 1787. Owner was Esther Wilkins in East Sham Township. The Wilkins family is a well-known Quaker family in that time. We also know the Gloucester County Abolitionist Census 1798 listed as free men of color, a Tab Still, Cupid Still, a James Still, a John Still, and a Bonham Still. That James Still is not the same James Still we'll talk about today. Over 90 antebellum black communities existed in South Jersey. Places like Freehaven, Satnertown, Snow Hill, Colemantown, Burlington, Petersburg, Little Texas, Clarksboro, and Indian Mills. Some of these places we drive by every day. The one it always touches with me is Little Texas. If you go, because I grew up in Morristown. So when you leave Morristown going into Mount Laurel, if you can recall, when you go into the underpasses, the Jersey Turnpike and the 295, there's a street right after you pass. It's called Texas Avenue. That's Little Texas. And I grew up. I had friends there. I grew up over there as a young man. So there were several Still families that thrived in all these black communities. 1798, 11 Steele purchases freedom from a young slave owner, William Wood. His wife Sidney had to escape twice from the slave owner Alexander Griffith. In 1804, Sidney Steele escaped twice from the plantation. The first attempt, she took all of her 4 children. The second attempt, she had to leave behind 2 of her sons, Peter and Levin Jr. She had to leave them in bondage. I can't even imagine the thought that I would have to leave my family behind. That's like me walking up to you today and saying, you can be free. Come with me now. And you just pack up and leave with me because you wanted to be free. You don't even think about your family, if you're going to see them again, none of that. So I can't even imagine how heart-wrenching that must have been for her. And they were in Caroline County, Maryland. On the second attempt, she took two of her daughters, Mahala and Katara. She reunited with her husband in Greenwich, New Jersey. Is that right? Greenwich, right? Not Greenwich, Greenwich. I get beat up on that one. She reunited with her husband in Greenwich, New Jersey. There's a small area, of black community there called Othello. There's also a historic Bethel AME church there. So Lebanon Cindy Steele, after arriving in Shamam, Cindy changed her name to Charity, and they modified their last name to Steele in order to hide within the other Free Steele families. So essentially, my family was grafted into the Steele families in South Jersey. So that's a key point. We might get back to it later. You can come back and ask me questions later on. So it said that Charity was claiming that she had 18 children, but only 14 were ever documented. We figured the other 4 were stillborn, and because their names were never listed. But it's claimed that she had 18 children. And we know that back in those days, people would have miscarriages and babies would be born still. So you can't add names to my family tree. This is what I figured was probably the route they came across from Caroline County. There was a group of Quakers there called the Nicolaites that I think they might have gotten help from in Maryland. They come across from Dover into Greenwich, New Jersey, up to Swedesboro, into Mahali. In all those places, there were AME churches there. So the AME churches and Underground Railroad kind of coincide together. And they later settled in Shamam in order to hide the fact that his wife was a fugitive. Here's Lebanon Steele's manumissions. From November 22nd, 1798. I, William Wood of Caroline County in the state of Maryland, do hereby set free from my bondage my Negro man called Lebanon Steele, aged about 24 years, and do for myself and my heirs, executors and administrators, release unto the said Lebanon Steele all my right and all claim whatsoever as to person or to any estate whatsoever may acquire, hereby declaring the said Negro man called Lebanon Steele absolutely free without any interruption from me or any other persons claiming under me. In witness whereof I have hereto set my hand and sealed this 22nd day, 11th month, 1798, William Wood. I found this in the land deed book in Maryland State Archives. Those big land deed books that you see in the archives. Thanks.
Such beautiful handwriting. Kids today don't know how to write cursive.
I don't know how to write like that. Yeah. So that's his manumission. This is a catalog of children from Lebanon, Charity Steele. It was produced for their son who was left in slavery, who reunited with the family in 1850. This is the catalog of their children. Let me see if I have it. So there's Lebanon Jr. We figured out Ann Steele died before they ran away for freedom. There's Lebanon Steele Jr., Peter Steele, Mahala Katara, Samuel Steele. Samuel Steele was my second great grandfather. He was the first freeborn of the family. February 7th, I got the date wrong. February 26, 1807. There was a Mary Still, Hannah Still, James Still, Isaac Still, John Nelson Still, Charles Wesley Still, Joseph Still, and William Still. William Still was the baby of the 18. Dr. James Still was there in the middle. Levin died December 24th, 1842. And from Levin's will, he bequeathed all his estate after paying off any debts to his wife Cherry. Samuel was given the farm known as Cato Bounds. James was given a 7-acre parcel of land. The remaining personal property divided among 6 remaining children: Mahala Thompson, Katara Wilmore, Mary Still, Charles Wesley Still, and John Nelson and William Still. 1843, there was 9 free, and 1 was still enslaved, and that was Peter Still. Like I know here, Peter Still in 1843 was still enslaved in Alabama, and unbeknownst to the family, that Levin Jr. passed away while enslaved on December 28, 1831. Levin Jr. passed away from beatings, being whipped as a slave in Alabama. William Still, the abolitionist. He authored a book called The Underground Railroad. See the volume of it? Pretty thick. He was given the account of helping over 800 enslaved Africans to freedom. He wrote this book in 1872. He was a civil rights activist, a successful entrepreneur. He sold land, ice, coal, and stoves. Quite a philanthropist in the city of Philadelphia. That picture to the far right is of him, we believe, at his coal merchant business. And it was located at 1216, 1218, 1220 South Washington Street, Philadelphia. He didn't have like a little square. He had the whole block. He began working in the anti-slavery office in 1847. He started working as a janitor and a clerk. He married a woman named Letitia. They rented a home at 17 Ronaldson Street, present day at 625 South Delhi Street, from 1850 to 1855. Their home was known as the Way House as part of the Underground Railroad network. They often hid runaways and held meetings with key abolitionists at their home. Anti-slavery office in 1852 was reorganized as a vigilance committee, and he was appointed as the chairman of it. He provided not only a network of hideouts, but also money, train tickets, food, medicine, lodging, and clothing for escaping enslaved Africans, for freedom seekers. He was given an account for over 800 fugitives who received assistance from him during his 14 years of service on the Underground Railroad. That today is the home that he rented from 1850 to 1855. So what's significant about that home is that John Brown, Harriet Tubman, Lewis Tappan, all the heavyweights of abolition, and Samuel Burris possibly walked through those doors. It's still standing today. And this past year, I worked on a committee that Philadelphia Mural Arts Division wanted to build a mural of William Still, to dedicate a mural. So on the side of that home is a mural now that we dedicated August 1st of this year. And I was on the committee to help with others that help with the design, select the design for this mural. It's a beautiful piece of art. It is located 1 block away from South Street, between 9th and 10th Avenue, between 9th and 10th Street, Philadelphia. Thomas Garrett, Harriet Tubman, William Lloyd Garrison. That's the people he was helping with. Samuel Burris, Lucretia Mott. All of them were, I don't know if the Tappans were Quakers, but I know that Thomas Garrett and Lucretia Mott were definitely Quakers. He helped create the network that Harriet Tubman worked on. It may not have been a Harriet Tubman if it wasn't for William Still. And vice versa. Little known facts that I discovered about Thomas Garrett. He was a member of the Hicksite Friendship Society in Wilmington, Delaware. He was a hardware merchant. His home was a refuge for fugitive enslaved Africans. There are several letters in the Underground Railroad book that William Still published that are letters from Thomas Garrett. There's documents in the Underground Railroad that talks about how Harriet Tubman would stop at Thomas Garrett's home and work with him on her way back and forth in and out of Maryland. John Brown confided with Still about his plans 6 months prior to the raid of Harper's Ferry. He aided John Brown's accomplishments after the Harper's Ferry Rebellion. The Underground Railroad was the only book that was written in its time in the account of fugitives. It wasn't written 30 and 40 years later. It was written of its time. When fugitive slaves or enslaved Africans would come into William Still's office, William Still's charge was to write their story down. Where'd you come from? Who was your master? How'd you get here? How long did you get here? Why did you leave? Right? That was his job to write that stuff down, and he had to hide that stuff.
Yeah, it was also the only Underground Railroad book written by a man of color.
Yes, true. So he wrote all this stuff down, and he had to hide it in a crypt at night, because after 1850, with the Great Compromise between the states, that information could would be able to, people could take that information and go find these enslaved Africans that were fugitives. So he had to hide this stuff in a crypt at night. Some of the noteworthy narratives of James Johnson, Henry Box Brown, William Allen Craft. I'm going to skip to James, and the next slide talks about James Johnson a little more. Henry Box Brown, everybody's heard of the Henry Box Brown story?
No.
So Henry Box Brown was an enslaved African in Richmond, Virginia. His wife and children got sold off, and he was like, I don't know where they're going. I can't find them. So he decided that it was better for him to be free than to stick around, because his family got sold further down in North Carolina somewhere. So he became friends with a local merchant there in Richmond, and he came up with this plan that he would put himself in a box that was 2'8" by 2 foot by 3 foot high, and he would ship himself to Philadelphia. He had like a canteen, and he had hardtack. Now hardtack is like a week-old biscuits, right? I can't even imagine what it tastes like, but I guess it wouldn't be moldy, it'd just be hard, like a hockey puck. So he does this, and it takes him 27 hours to get from Richmond, Virginia to Philadelphia. And for 24 of those hours, he was upside down. The box sat on it, this side up. They flipped it upside down, and they thought he was going to be dead when he got to Philadelphia. And when he gets to Philadelphia, they open the box, and he comes out, and he sings the 40th Psalm from the Bible. So if you have a Bible at home, go check out the 40th Psalm. I have not yet memorized it yet. I need to put it somewhere on one of my cue cards or something there. William Allen Craft. Allen Craft was white, doesn't she?
Yeah.
She wasn't. Her father was her slave owner, and her mother was one of his enslaved Africans. William Craft was her husband. So they decided they were in Macon, Georgia, and they decided that during Christmas time, they might be able to slip away and not really pay attention because people are partying and having a good time for Christmas and holidays. So she's disguised herself as a man. She wrapped her face up like she had a toothache so she couldn't talk. And she put her arm in a sling so she couldn't write. And her husband portrayed that he was her slave. They traveled from Macon, Georgia, all the way to Philadelphia. And they stayed in some of the best places, nice trains, nice hotels. And that's how they got their escape. Henry Box Brown, can anybody imagine, guess on what Henry Box Brown did after he became free? He went to London, but he had a profession. Any idea what he might have done? Give me a guess. No, not a preacher.
Making boxes.
Close. He became a magician. Jumping out of boxes. Jane Johnson was traveling. So Jane Johnson, trial of emancipators, Jane Johnson, Flight to Freedom, Pastor Williamson's involvement. Jane Johnson was traveling with her slave owner, Colonel John Wheeler. John Wheeler was the ambassador to Nicaragua. I didn't even know Nicaragua was even a country back then, but it was. And what the southerner plantation owners, because Nicaragua grew sugar cane and had tobacco, it was a slave country. They were trying to foster relationships with them. So Wheeler was the ambassador to Nicaragua. So, but after 1850, if you came across the Mason-Dixon line with your slave owner, you were technically could be free if you wanted to be. If you ran away by yourself and you came into Pennsylvania, you were a fugitive. Jane Johnson knew this. So when they get to Philadelphia, she gets a note to William Still. William Still grabs his attorney, Pastor Williamson, and they go down to the docks, broad daylight. They go to her, she's standing next to her slave owner, and they're like, you can be free. Come with us today. So they took her and her two children and got her out of there. She ended up going to New York. But in the meantime, William Still, Pastor Williamson, and some other folks got locked up. Pastor Williamson was his attorney. He was a Quaker. His father was an attorney in Philadelphia. And he actually publicized the fact that he got locked up for like 90 days. That's why they took this picture. It was like the abolitionist propaganda to say, look what we're doing. Look how far we'll go to help free the enslaved Africans. We'll get locked up for 90 days. And they used it as part of their propaganda. I think I have the title of the book in my references at the end of this, but there's a wonderful book about this whole court case. What I think about this court case is this. If this side understand that John Wheeler was friends with the U.S. president at the time. So he went and got the U.S. Marshals involved to be involved. He contacted the president. They got the U.S. Marshals involved. They were trying to get Jane Johnson back into slavery. There was police officers who were friendly to the abolitionists in Philadelphia. Imagine law and order. One side is the Philadelphia police officers and one side the U.S. Marshals. She walks in and nobody knew she was coming. So this is like surprising that this black woman would come and sit and give testimony in the Philadelphia federal courts. Not even talk about how the fact that this incident went straight from on the street to the federal courts. It didn't even go through like what you would think the normal traditionary measures are. You go through, the city and then the federal. It went straight to federal, right? So she comes in, gives testimony, and when she finishes, the Philadelphia police officers had to surround her to get her out of the courtroom before the U.S. Marshals would snatch her up and take her back in. So you can imagine a ruckus. I think of it as a Law and Order type TV show. Some of the accomplishments of William Still after the Civil War. the founder of the Christian Street YMCA in 1889. He was a leader in ending the segregation of the streetcars in 1867. He was a member of the statewide Colored Independent Party. He gave an address on voting and labor in 1874. And in 1902, an obituary in the New York Times reported he was known throughout the country as the father of the Underground Railroad. The address of voting and labor in 1874, I'll touch base on that because I think it goes along with some of the thoughts that we have today. In 1874, William still gave his endorsement to an independent Mario candidate that was running for mayor in Philadelphia. He got a lot of flack for it because he wasn't endorsing the Republican Party at that time, because most blacks supported the Republican Party at that time, right? So it got to the point where people almost rioted his business and burned it down, and so he publicly had to go do a town hall meeting and talk about why he endorsed this independent candidate. And basically what he was saying was that you need to read about the person that you are voting for and make your decisions for yourself and not just go along party lines. Very important fact. Today. And I'll leave that alone. They were the actual copies of the pamphlets that were written about the streetcars in Philadelphia and the voting and laboring speech that he gave at the Council Hall in Philadelphia. He was named to the Philadelphia Board of Trade by Executive Committee. He was the first African American. His book, The Underground Railroad, was on exhibition at the Philadelphia Centennial Exposition in 1876. He served on the board of Orphan Asylum for Children of Negro Soldiers and Sailors. He assisted in the appointments of Philadelphia's first black police officers. He was a successful coal merchant, stone merchant. The Board of Trade, he was the first African American to sit on the Board of Trade in Philadelphia. Think about that. All your heavy business-minded men were on that board. They were the ones who made Philadelphia, right? They were movers and shakers of Philadelphia. He was appointed on that board. He had a daughter named Caroline Still Anderson, and she was the first African American woman to become a licensed physician in the city of Philadelphia. She was born in 1849 and died in 1919. She was the oldest daughter of William and Letitia Still. She received her BA, Bachelor of Arts from Oberlin College, 1867. She received her MD from Medical College of Pennsylvania, 1878, which is now Drexel University Medical College. She became an educator in Philadelphia for a short while. She also attended Howard University to study medicine, but she would later transfer back to Philadelphia Medical College of Pennsylvania. She interned 1 year at the New England Hospital for Women and Children. She married twice. Her first husband, Edward Wiley, died in 1874. Her second husband was Reverend Matthew Anderson, pastor of the Berean Baptist Church. She was inspired to become a doctor from her uncle, James Still, and his son, James T. Thomas, who were, father was an herbalist, and Dr. James Thomas Still was third African American to graduate from Harvard Medical School in 1871. One of his quotes, "Truth certainly fears no investigation. The truth certainly fears no investigation." Now, I talked about a Peter Still briefly, and he was left in slavery. Well, Peter survived 40 years of being enslaved. He was able to buy his freedom in 1850 for $500 from the Freedman brothers two Jewish merchants who owned Peter for a short time. In 1850, Freeman Brothers released Peter in Ohio. There he traveled to Philadelphia where he met his brother William, who was the secretary of the anti-slavery office. That's really kind of a short synopsis of it. It really doesn't do it justice. There was a book written after he got free, after Peter became free. It's called The Kidnapped and the Ransom. His book talks about how he was enslaved and how he got his freedom. When he got his freedom, his brother William and a man named Seth Compton, who was an Irishman, organized to help escape, to free his family from slavery, Peter's family. And unfortunately, the escape failed and Compton was killed. He had, in order to get his family back out of slavery, he had to raise $5,000 to get his wife and children back. He did that by going around like I'm doing and talking about how bad slavery was. And within 5 years, he raised over $5,000. $5,000 in today's dollars is $177,000. He settled in Burlington Township, Burlington City, New Jersey, and he had a successful produce business. He grew and sold produce in Burlington City, New Jersey. Dr. James Still, he only received 3 months of formal education. He practiced herbal medicine. He distilled his own medicines and extracts from roots and herbs. He studied books on anatomy, physiology, botany, and the preparation of medicine. The picture to the left is a tenement home, is a home that he brought. It was a tavern, and he turned it into a hospital. The interesting story that he writes about that tavern was that the guy that owned the tavern told him he would never sell it to him. And Dr. James went up for auction. He put a bid on it, went home for the day, came back, and he found out that he had won the bid. He's buried over in Jacob's Chapel, AME, in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, off of Elbow Lane. And he was the black doctor of the Pinewoods. Not the Pine Woods, not the Pine Bluffs, Pinewoods. There's only 3 areas in the country that are considered Pinewoods. And New Jersey's one of them. He purchased land from Isaac Haynes at a crossroads in Medford, New Jersey. And he also purchased a log cabin and relocated it to that property at the crossroads. He considered Nathaniel Wilkins a good friend. Not everybody was helping him now. He went to some of the Quakers and asked them, and they didn't help him. But he found help with Levi Jones and Isaac Hayes. And I think once he built a reputation of that he could pay you back your money, they were more willing to help him out. He was known to have cures for scrophula. He used stuff like Queen Anne's lace, sassafras, skunk cabbage roots, Virginia snake root, and tea berry. Tea berry tastes like wintergreen. You ever had wintergreen gum? That's what tea berry tastes like. I remember picking it as a kid with my father out in the woods. That right there image is an image of, in the 1876 atlas, Scott Atlas, of Dr. James Still's home. His office is still standing there to the left. His home fell down in 1932. He had a 3-story Victorian style home. And a very nice home for African American during that time. He sold his medicines at various pharmacies in New Jersey. He developed a treatment that cured skin cancer, supposedly. He treated all races of people. By the age of 70, he was the 3rd largest landowner in Medford, New Jersey. Some of his medical prowess, chapter 14 in the book, doctors still would examine patients externally and internally in order to diagnose the fever. He ordered patients the first bath bathed in soda water or a weak lye solution. Sudorific medicine given to the patient in order to induce sweating, like I am right now. It's ideal for me. Drink catnip tea 2 or 3 times a day. He took a naturalistic approach to curing ailments. He had this stuff called the black salve healing ointment. There's evidence of where he sold it in different pharmacies throughout the state. This place is up in Trenton, New Jersey.
That's still there.
I don't believe it is, no. And I don't have this recipe. I know you're going to ask me to give a book of books. I wish he did. I don't have it. And some of the property we've owned in the area. This right here is his office today. This area. He owned all this property in here. His first home was back in this area here. Senator Medford used to be here. He actually brought the township hall from Medford and all this area here. Back in those days.
What street is that?
That's Church Road and 541. His son James became the 3rd African American to graduate Harvard Medical School. He graduated with honors in 1971. He had a successful practice at 166 Cambridge Street, Boston, Massachusetts. He authored a book titled Don't Tell White Folks, Light Out of Darkness, Boston, 1889. And it really was a book. It was a book that showed African Americans how to work and live in a world surrounded by white America. The things you should do and what you shouldn't do in order to be successful. Some of the quotes out of Dr. James Still's book: the laws of nature are justly executed, the rich, the poor, the learned, the unlearned, the king who rules a nation, or the beggar upon the wayside, all meet at a common level of humanity of the great. Riches are gained more by saving than by earning. It is no matter how much one earns, he can spend it all in one less time than it took to earn it and still be poor. A man who is saving is often called mean and stingy. No doubt some are so, but I've often thought if it were not for some saving, there would be none to help another. A great mind is planted within us in the beginning of our lives. And like other plants, it needs cultivation and watering from the best plants, plus fountains. That pictures of Goshen Pond in that time. So you didn't think that I just talked about all this stuff and I didn't read anything. I actually did read something. So here's some of my references. The first 3 are the 3 major books that really kept a lot of family history together. The Peter Still papers were the online digital collections. It's where I found a catalog of charities children. Kevin's been online digital collections have been helpful. Camp William Penn. William Still was the post sutler from Camp William Penn. Post sutler is the contracting officer. Camp William Penn was where the U.S. colored troops were trained and mustered before they went down to the Civil War. And he didn't get that. He didn't bid on that job. The general of the Army requested for William Still to take that position because of his business savvy in the city of Philadelphia. Henry Box Brown, the narrative of the life of Henry Box Brown. William Allen Craft of Running 1,000 Miles for Freedom is a really good book. Giles Wright. Some of you might know Giles Wright. How many know that the quilts are fake? The quilts. The quilts. The quilts are fake. The codes on quilts were supposed to be hung. They were hung over the banisters of homes and had codes on them. And enslaved Africans were supposed to read these codes to tell where they were supposed to go. It's fake. First of all, you couldn't read or write. So how were you going to know what code in Georgia is to a code in Maryland? That's why the songs were so important, because you could sing these songs that had codes in them. Wade in the water, swing low, sweet chariot, follow the drinking gourd. You couldn't read or write. So bad that a lot of times you understand something. If you got caught reading a book or writing, people's hands got cut off, their tongues got cut out, their eyes were put out, and they did that publicly in front of all the other slaves. So this whole idea that people were using codes on quilts is false. You won't find a single historian that writes about the Underground Railroad that talks about the quilts being used. It's fake lore, and we need to stop talking about it. The Wonderful Children's Book. You have grandchildren, you want to introduce them to the Underground Railroad, or young people, it's an excellent book. The gentleman's out of Texas. I met him online. I met him, and I talked to him, had a conversation with him, and said that he was writing this book. He needed some help in the history of the family, and I helped him out with it. So that worked out pretty well for us. He does other books of that type, of that era. If you want to know some history about Philadelphia, not only just about William Still, The Vigilance, it's an excellent book for that. It gives you the backdrop of where William Still was living and doing in Philadelphia. It's much more than it's about William Still. You know so much more about the city of Philadelphia and what was going on politically, what the climate was. It's an excellent book for that. The gentleman wrote this, Andrew Deemer, again, needed some help, some clarity on the family history. Because, as I alluded to earlier, not all the Stills are related. People have my family living alongside. It's not true. So those three books right there, William Still, His Life, that's an interview with a gentleman named James P. Boyd, the Green Book, and then the Brown Book is an early recollection of Dr. James Still, his autobiography. And then the Red Book is a Kidnapped and a Ransom. Have you ever been on Church Road in Medford? The building used to look like the one to the left for many years. In 2006, the family got the state to get involved and they bought the property to preserve it. And in 2016, the state finally found some money to do the structural rehabilitation of the property, of the medical office that's still standing. As you see, they took off the addition and the front porch. It wasn't original. But you see those core bells going around the top? That's original. And in 2024, the state, along with help from the family, began restoring Dr. James Still's office to as close to 1855 as possible. And then, was it this year? This year. Yeah, it was this year. They finished restoring it to 1855. It is our nonprofit that has to make it an interpretive center. So I do what I'm doing now in order to raise money so that we can build and put the storyboards or have the graphic displays in there. So when you walk in, you can feel what it felt like to be there in 1855. Yes.
It's the only black history site owned by the state of New
Yes.
Jersey.
It's the only African American site owned by the state of New Jersey to represent African American history.
You know what, I hate to interrupt, and I think that's so important, because a lot of the work that I do in my advocacy, and it's like all in the northern region of the state, and I'm on this mission to and not to interrupt that or usurp your presentation because she certainly respected mine. But what we're doing is so important, and we need to get this in the northern part of the state and tell them to come on now. Because all your history sits right here.
Yeah.
And your legacy families are telling.
We're on the Black Heritage Trail.
Yeah.
We have a marker that will be unveiled in a couple weeks. So we give presentations to kids. The group down below was a group of archaeologists, volunteers. We did a archaeological study where we uncovered like thousands of pieces, full-size bottles of fragments of artifacts, plates, glasses, bottles, all kinds of various different things. In the archaeological study, we had that for 2 years, and we're hoping to get back to that. But we have over a few thousand pieces. Some aren't really all intact, and we're hoping to show some of that in the interpretation of his office. The site is located out in Medford, New Jersey. Crossroads, I call it Crossroads, but it's at 541 in Church Road. It's a 23-acre state park that my association, there's like 10 of us, right? 8, 10 of us, that we cut the grounds. During the summer, we have volunteers that cut 5 acres of grass like once a week. The state helps to some point, but the managing of the day-to-day, it's up to us. And we're all volunteers. I don't get paid. Yes.
A little bit of confusion here. You said the other site, the other slide you showed us was at the intersection of 541 and Church in Medford. You just said this is at 541 and Church in Mount Holly?
No, Medford, I'm sorry. Medford.
Okay,
Medford.
thank you.
The visitor center that we have is open. It's a yellow building there, and that's located on 541 or Medford Mahaly Road. That's at 210 Medford Mahaly Road. We're open the first and third Sundays of each month from 11:30 to 4. We're open tomorrow, right? Yep. Kenny?
I'll be there.
Kenny will be there tomorrow. We have nature trails that you can walk. The meadow right now is beautiful. It's got yellow tick seed and ironweed. So there's a purple and gold thing going on out in the meadow. It's beautiful.
There's some goldenrod.
In goldenrod, right? Yep. You can email us at drjamesstillcenter@gmail. Website is drjamesstillcenter.org. Nature trails are open year round from dawn to dusk. And the visitor center is open from first and third Sundays of each month from 11:30 to 4. Any questions?
And he came, or his crew came to the little schoolhouse right around the corner here on Brainerd Street last week or the week before. Is it about the Civil War or about the Revolutionary War? Or
I heard probably revolutionary.
But he should be including parts of our history like this, and if he's not, he should be chastised for it.
Good point.
We did a film about after Reconstruction, whatever it was called after that, where all the progress of the Reconstruction was gotten rid of because of a deal between the two presidential candidates, and it was a tie. So then the Democrats got back in. So I forget what the word was, but it was after Reconstruction. He did do a film about that, I believe.
Any other questions?
The 800 people that were, the 800 Africans that were freed, they had track of like what their lives were like after they were freed and where they ended up.
There are some writings about them. Some of the letters that are in in William Still's book talk about that. We know in 1855, him and Dr. James Still went to Canada to go visit those people that William was sending up there that settled in Canada. And that's why we infer that Dr. James Still must have been taking some movement, some involvement in the Underground Railroad. There's no documents linking him directly to the Underground Railroad, but we figured that because his brother was such, and then was such a person that was part of the Underground Railroad that Dr. James said was probably somewhere along the line helping those fugitives.
But Sam, you have to tell it, they changed names to protect people. So
Right.
they
Yes.
didn't use their original names in the book. So that they couldn't experience retaliation, like, doxing today and stuff. So even though they know about what happened, we don't specifically know what their name was after.
I'm just wondering, like, people who are saved, what contributions
She's
they
going
could
to
have
ask a
made.
question, but
A
doesn't
lot of
want to
them
be
became
finished.
abolitionists themselves.
And what's so amazing about the book itself, Underground Railroad, is that it's still being used today. People use this book to find their ancestors. Dr. Charles Bloxton, he's passed away, but he has a collection over at Temple University. It's called the Charles Bloxton Collection. Charles Bloxton got started because he found his grandfather's name in his book. And people started giving Charles Bloxton all this material. And it turned out to be a whole collection of building in Temple University, at Temple University. So people still use this book today. Yes, ma'am.
Has it been digitalized?
Yes, it has. But I'd rather for you to buy the book. I'll be out.
Question. Maybe you won't answer there. What information would people leave behind in the book, The Underground Railroad?
What's that?
What information would people leave behind in the book?
They left behind like where they came from. Did they have any children they left behind? What their master's name was, what town they were from, how they traveled. Like when Henry Box Brown traveled, like packages himself in a box. When the word got out that he shipped himself, the U.S. Postal Service changed how they did business. They started checking on the boxes, right? People used to smuggle themselves on ships, right? And what they started doing, when they found out people was doing that, they started coming up with the idea of smoking the ships. They would walk through these ships and they would smoke it out in the different departments to see who would come up out of it. So it changed the way people did things. How they approached, how these slave catchers would come up and get hold of people.
Oh, I just said, I think I misspoke. You were talking about the Revolutionary War and how Ken Burns would portray it. And I thought you were talking about after the Civil War, when there was Reconstruction, and then there was another period that had some name for it that showed everything, all the troops, all the progress, and freedom was taken away from the blacks and everything. So I thought that's what
He's making a new movie right now.
Yeah, but he did the Civil War in 1990. It was a series on PBS, so that, he did it a long time ago. Yeah,
that was about after the Civil War, anyway.
but if you Google, you'll
Yes,
see.
sir.
Well, I was just going to mention, you mentioned the AME churches occasionally, and that meeting has a connection with Greater Mount Zion AME there, and Reverend Boyer was mentioning, the first time I met him actually, he was saying that there's such an appreciation in the African American community for Quakers because generally speaking, the little AME churches were close to where Quaker meetings were, and that from the beginning there was a tight bond there, and that was part of the legacy for both of us, both AME and Quakers.
At Jacob's Chapel, the meeting hall they have out there, at Jacob's Chapel, was the Quaker meeting hall. It actually came from the crossroads of Memphis. And it
was always the black.
well, didn't it
They
move?
called it a meeting house, but that was a common thing to call any kind of church.
Okay, but it was moved from.
It was moved from Bridge Road.
It was moved from Grace Road to Jacob's Chapel.
I just wanted to ask real quick about the triangular tree you were talking about.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm an old teacher. We always taught rum was a real important part of that. Because you get the sugar cane, you get the slaves. The sugar cane was sent up, turned into rum, and they all wanted it.
Yeah.
You hadn't mentioned that.
Rum was in there.
Oh,
It was listed in there, yeah.
Maybe
It was.
It's a small word. Yeah, it is.
Well, it's not too far. Just real quick, guy. It's not that far-fetched that the last name Still. Speaking of rum, it's not that far-fetched that the last name Still came from enslaved Africans that were master distillers. We know on John Huck's plantation, he had a tavern. He sold whiskey. And it's not that far-fetched that those enslaved Africans that he had working distilling the alcohol just changed their last, just shortened it and called them still. That's my theory. Don't run out of here and go tell some stills alongside that their ancestors were rum runners or something like that. They might even come after me even more so.
And a black man named up from there is called Jack Daniels.
You're right. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Yes, guy.
There's a house on South 12th Street between Walnut and Locust, had the James School marker. What is the business of that house? I've never heard of it.
On 12th Street?
Yeah.
That's William Stills. That was the last home. Yeah, that was the last home that he lived in.
Okay.
Before he passed.
I thought he lived in Holland for a short while too.
Who?
William Still.
No. No. James still had a son that lived in Mahali. This is an interesting fact. James still had a son. He had a couple sons. But one son named Joseph became an herbalist who lived on 49 Madison Street, 47 Madison Street, somewhere in there, right down the street from the hospital. Interesting thing is that Joseph was flamboyant about himself. He had a white carriage, he had white horses, he thought he was it, right? He went against the political power in the city of Mahali, and they bankrupted him. And he died being a pauper. So, all the nice stuff that Dr. Still talks about in his book about growing up and staying out drinking houses and being humble. One brother, I guess one son didn't get it. It didn't rub off.
Oh, thank you for that.
Who's next? Who's next?
Just a statement, someone mentioned like the proximity of the meeting houses to an AME church. If you go to the light here and look across the corner adjacent to your right, you're going to see a little AME church with a red door. I don't know the name of that church.
St. Paul's Methodist Church.
The one right over here.
Mama Rob.
Yep, yeah, so just
My father was superintendent there
yeah.
for many years. My father's immediate family, they lived at 236 Washington Street.
Yeah.
And they said the house was always full of people in it. Because there were 17 brothers and sisters.
What year?
They moved there, they moved off the farm out of Chemung in 1938, 1939, somewhere in there.
So my great uncle lived at 237 or 226.
Okay, yeah.
Street. So they would have known each other.
I would have known each other
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. Anything else? Anybody else? Can you?
I want to add about the mindfulness session tomorrow.
Yeah. Tomorrow we do every third Sunday we do a sound bath meditation. We have an herbalist who comes in and she does sound bath, and she comes in with the crystals, and we meditate for about 20, 30 minutes. We do it every third Sunday. So that's our big thing tomorrow. She usually starts at 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock.
Two months ago, I lived in Mexico, and while you were talking about the Underground Railroad, I was wondering, do you know anything, because Texas was a slave state, Louisiana was a slave state. Is there anything about slaves escaping into Mexico?
Yeah, I don't know all the particulars, but yes,
Yeah.
it did occur.
Yeah, a lot of people think the Underground Railroad only went north,
Yeah,
but
it
it
went
also went
south
to
too.
the Caribbean and south.
Well, thank you very much. Did anybody else have?
No, just down.
Did anybody else have any questions?
Guy, did you have a question? Okay.
Okay. Well, we very much appreciate
Thank you.
your presentation and all the good work that you do.
Thank you.